Okay, folks, I want to call the Hopkinton Town Council meeting of September 4th, 2018 to order with a moment of silent meditation and salute to the flag. Okay, like the last meeting, I want to have a motion to move the other business of the town ahead of the hearing, and then we can concentrate on the hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. First up is the consent agenda. Approved town council meeting minutes of August 20th, 2018. Executive session minutes of August 20th, 2018. Accept the July 16, 2018 transcript as a record of zoning ordinance amendment and comp plan future land use map amendment, hearing filed by Rhode Island Solar Renewable Energy III, LLC. Approve abatements resulting from adjustments on motor vehicles, tangibles, and real property subject to tax assessment.
I'd like to pull July 16.
Move that we approve the consent agenda minus 16.
Second.
Just a motion to accept the consent agenda with the July 16th pulled off.
Motion made in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Bob, what page?
Is it because we had issues prior to that, Billy was the president that day, it was either Beverly or Vinny. And I think Lisa can check that and just make that name correct. Just make sure, page around 11. It would just take Lisa to find out who the president was at that time.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you meant Vinny, but I didn't know it was Vinny. And he just got us. Motion to accept the July 16, 2018 transcript as the record of the zoning ordinance.
Second.
Motion made in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's see. Public forum, we're going to kind of go in order with all the old business. Public forum, anyone want to issue heard as we get through our normal agenda? We don't obviously have plenty of time for the new business, discuss and consider setting a hearing date for an amendment to the solar ordinance introduced and sponsored by all the councils, myself, Tom, Barbara, David, and Sylvia. Can you hear me now? Okay, I'll repeat. Under old business number 1, discuss and consider setting a hearing date for the amendment to the solar ordinance introduced and sponsored by all 5 councilors, myself, Tom, Barbara, David, and Sylvia. This is a culmination of workshops that we've had with the planning board to amend the current solar ordinance. We've got a pretty good draft working, and we need to have a hearing on those changes, and then ultimately vote on that. So, anybody want to throw out a date, I guess, for
Lisa?
Yeah, Lisa should choose.
what do you think, Lisa?
So you've got the zoning amendment hearing on October 1st. This is loud enough? So looking ahead into the month of September, you've got the 17th is too early to hold that because it has to be advertised 3 times. So your earliest meeting that you could have it would be October 1st or October 15th.
Let's go 10:15.
10:15 is fine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Number 2, discuss, consider, and vote to appropriate funds for 2 new meeting room chairs from the Town Council contingency line item 5065-001. We have 5 chairs at the council chambers, but the 3 guys that sit up here today are okay with the current chairs. Ladies would like some new ones because they're not comfortable.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we spend up to $1,500 just in case the other council wants the chairs, or we decide that the chairs are all gonna match up on the council. So that's a motion to for $1,500. Cover very well.
That's a second, yeah.
Motion made, seconded.
I would really like to see us have 5 chairs there. Those chairs are 10 or 15 years old. We sit up here for 4 hours. It's not just the council, but the planning board and the zoning board, and we have big men. And we need, I think, the chairs need to support. They need some lumbar support. They are old. Sylvia and I have taken a look at them. We went to Staples, and the one that we're looking at in particular is $289. I think all 5 chairs should match and not just have 2 chairs for the ladies. We are actually concerned about the entire council and the other boards and commissions that meet at town hall.
Okay. I don't need a chair, but that's okay.
I know you said that.
I can sit.
I'm not voting against this, I like the chair. But I like to have my old chair. I like it,
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion, folks?
Just one other thing. The lever doesn't work anymore. That's a big issue too. You know how it goes up or down? It just doesn't want to work anymore.
Right, so are we voting on 5 chairs or 2?
We're voting on $1,500, which could be 5 chairs, but it certainly is 2 chairs.
Correct. Any further discussion, folks? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, under new business, discuss and consider scheduling a hearing date regarding a zone ordinance and comprehensive plan flume amendment application filed by Atlantic Solar LLC Atlantic Control System Inc. for properties identified as Plat 7 Lot 32, Plat 10 Lot 87, Plat 11 Lot 35, and RFR 80 zone. This is the, I believe, Grundy application.
I would recommend you move it to November 5th, available, so that the council can start off meeting.
Does that seem doable, Lisa?
The new council won't be seated until
The 19th?
November 19th.
19th.
I still think that's
Do
fine.
we have enough time to move it to that far? I know there's so many days that it's gotta be heard once the application is put in.
Well, let's start out with how was November 5th?
Well, the new council will be in till the
The
19th.
19th.
I think Tom is correct. We should wait for the council.
I do too.
There's no sense in having it
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
do it twice. So.
19th work? November 19th, okay.
Frank, can you tell the audience where that property is?
I get plat lot numbers here, Dave. It's in our packet. We're just scheduling the hearing.
Sorry, I just
Yeah, it's in there. I believe it's the Grundy application. Okay, so we're good, police on that one, on November 19th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Boards and commissions, discuss, consider, and vote to appoint Keith Lundelow to the planning board.
So moved.
Second.
A motion made and seconded. Any discussion, folks? Is Keith here tonight? Oh, there he is. Having heard none, all those in favor? Aye. Welcome, Keith. Okay. All that business has been disposed of. Next, we're going to deal with the hearing. Zone amendment and comprehensive plan future land use map amendment, Rhode Island Solar Renewable Energy LLC. It's a continuation of the hearing for a zoning ordinance amendment and comprehensive plan for future land use map amendment filed by Rhode Island Solar Renewable Energy LLC, 43 Preston Way, Warwick, for property owned by George Townsend, Rose Townsend, Carleen Bowen, trustee, 350 Woodville Alton Road, Hope Valley, for property located at 350 Woodville Alton Road, identified as Assessors Plat 11, Lot 57, Zone RFR 80. 6 Townsend Road, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, 02832, for property located at 6 Townsend Road, identified as Assessors Plat 11, Lot 57D, Zone RFR 80. The zoning ordinance amendment is filed in accordance with Section 16 of the zoning ordinances of the Town of Hopkinton as amended. The comprehensive plan amendment is filed in accordance with Chapter 2, Article 2, Division 5, Sections 2 through 116A, continued from August 6, 2018. The applicant is proposing to change portions of the properties from RFR 80 zone to commercial special zone, with a limitation to solar use for the portions of the properties to install a solar array to allow the erection and installation of solar panels to generate approximately, I believe that's 12 megawatts of energy that's been reduced per year, utilizing 97.5 acres of the 97.5 acres on Assessor's Plat 11, Lot 57, and utilizing 2.8 acres of the 5 acres on Assessor's Plat 11, Lot 57D. Applicants present, Mr. Macarano. What I want to do this time is to, this is I believe our 5th hearing on this matter, is to get anyone that has not spoken at all at any of the prior hearings to please come up and form a line, or just come up as you need to. I'm going to limit it, folks, to 5 minutes or less, and we're going to conclude this meeting tonight at 10 p.m. Just state your name, and maybe have your comments.
Good evening. My name is Jim Brazos. I live in Brazos, K-O-D-C, Brazos. And I live in beautiful residential Ohio. And I just want to state that I'm not opposed to self-energy. I am very much opposed to rezoning residential properties to accommodate solar farms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Andrew.
My name is Andrew Gardner, a Hopkinton resident, and I'm hoping that everyone got the letter I sent.
Yes.
I'm all for renewable energy, I think it's great, but if it's going to do more harm to our environment than good, then it's not. People want to see the effects of taking them, clear cutting 60 acres in the case of the old Depot Road, 160 acres in the case of Russian Wood. We're going to see some bad things play out for years to come. And I was especially looking at Old Depot Road, which is close to 95. Cars are a big source of air pollution. They're a necessary evil. And trees take in, as I said in the letter, 1 acre of forest absorbs 6 tons of carbon dioxide. They return nearly 4 tons of oxygen to us. That's in 1 acre. And the old Depot Road being right near 95, I just see disaster all around. At the August 6th meeting, we were told that noise from the highway would not be easier to hear after the tree removal. It was a paid expert gave her the reason why this would be so. But I know from common sense that's just not true. She mentioned fencing to abate more noise, if that becomes an issue. But again, that's more fragmentation of wildlife habitat. And in my opinion, instead of trying to mitigate damage, why do the damage in the first place? Mr. Mancini also told us that the applicant would not be using toxins to control vegetation. He said that they would be weed whacked. That's nearly 60 acres, and on a continuous basis, I don't believe that would happen. The non-residents want to come in and change our zoning amendments, whatever. That just opens the floodgate for further changes, and then we wouldn't even recognize our town down the road. The Hopkinton area and northeast runs from Boston to Washington DC. Brushy Brook and Hopkinton is a part of that. And that would also be influenced by the decisions made by the committee. The earth belongs to God, we're just stewards of it. And I'm looking at the environmental impact. And I just beg you not to change our zoning for non-residents to come in. And plus, they want to make a profit, that's understandable. I just think there's a better way to go about solar energy rather than clear cutting all this forest. I mean, we're hurting ourselves, and I think it's going to end up costing the town more money in the long run. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy.
Karen Bravo, 28 Old Depot Road. Ferrao. Let me thank you for your time this evening. I have been resident of Old Depot Road for almost 30 years. We were one of the originals on the road. We built our home when we were just kids ourselves, and we chose Old Depot Road because it was out in the country. The wildlife is incredible. On any given day, you can see deer, foxes, turkeys going through ours and our neighbors' yards. Even though 95 is close by, if you look at the proposed site, it's not only act as a buffer for noise, but also a home for all the wildlife. We have raised 3 children on Old Depot Road, and 1 is still in high school. My oldest 2 are graduates of Terre High School, and have since moved out and are living on their own. Our oldest lives near Washington, D.C., and at some point would like to come home to raise her children in a peaceful and country setting. As my husband and I prepare for retirement over the next 10 to 15 years, it was our hope to someday pass down our house to one of our children so they could raise our grandchildren in a safe, healthy environment. If the proposed solar farm would come about, the country atmosphere on Old Depot Road would be one. Just to name a few of our concerns, I feel the noise level would increase immensely. All of the beautiful trees would go on and unable to shelter us from storms, and our property values will decrease. Our water source will become contaminated if one or more of the panels become compromised. I'm not sure then it would be a great place for my grandchildren to live. Hopkinton is based on tradition, and there are many generations of families that have found it and made it such a great place to live. Now I ask of you, please keep Hopkinton country. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening.
Hello, Deb.
How are you?
Hello.
My name is Debbie McBride. I live on 46 Old Depot Road. I just wanted to say that, like Karen, I lived on Old Depot Road for over 20 years, raised our children there, and our kids have always loved it. We love the environment. We came from the city like in West Warwick, and we always said to our kids, you know, enjoy those trees across the road. You never know, there could be a development there at any time, but never did we think it would be solar panels and not houses. Now our children are growing up. My oldest, for the past 6 months, has been considering investing in his own property. He has a great job, he loves where he lives, and he's looking at similar property to what we have on Old Depot Road. And his friends are all the same. They're all the same age. They're at a point where they want to make the same investments. And they're excited about it. And they've come to these meetings, as many as they could. And just recently, when they got together, it went from that excitement of their future here to, dude, what are you considering that for? Because you're going to invest thousands of dollars in property and then wake up and you got solar panels next door. And that really made me feel sad because that's our future of this town. It's the young ones who are now seeing that this can happen no matter where you're buying property in a residential area. It's not necessarily going to stay residential. That you can wake up to these solar panels right next door. And I think that's the part that really upsets me. Yes, at Old Depot Road, I was happy when the developer agreed to push that line back, but overall,
Thanks, Deb.
Not preparing things, I'm doing this on the fly, so forgive me. Dan Jensen, 30 Prospect Square, Wyoming, Ohio. I'm against any zoning changes for large-scale solar altogether. Because I do not think we're using the right tools in the toolbox to make this more of a resource that can sustain long-term planning. I don't see, I've spoken to several solar companies, and one thing one is doing with the wind turbines is they're keeping secondary succession habitat underneath these turbines and only have like a 5-acre footprint. And they're coming in every few years and mowing it, letting it grow back, keeping animals we've seen in decades, like grouse, certain types of birds. I mean, the cottontail rabbit isn't the original species, but it was nice for a lot of them around. So I haven't seen any, I've been reviewing some of these permits that you have completed, given to them. I have not seen any habitat as far as meadow habitat incorporated into the plans. And it's just a really good opportunity to add this to these projects that are being approved, and I haven't seen that. So in my opinion, I know it's a bad word, but I would say complete moratorium until it's get to look at that.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Moore.
Hello, thank you for the few minutes to just bring up a couple of points. I'm only going to take a moment. Joe and I have found ourselves in very precarious positions with the ownership of 2 previous properties. So because of that, we did our due diligence in researching the purchase of our home on Old Depot Road. One thing we did was we went to the town hall and researched what the zoning was. And we felt very comfortable and reassured that this was going to be a residential zone property, and we were going to be able to live in the fashion that we had always lived in our previous homes in the country. I know that if Joe and I wanted to cut down every tree on our property, we could. But if we wanted to put a pool in, add on to our home for our own use, add on a deck, we would have to get a permit to do this. What I don't understand is that if I wanted to add on to our property to put a business in our home, we couldn't do that. Zoning wouldn't permit it. What is the difference? Isn't the solar project a business? If I wanted to make an apartment in my home to help support us in our retirement, we couldn't do this. Zoning doesn't permit it. I abide by the rules of the town of Hopkinton. Please don't change the rules that I abide by.
Thank you. Anyone else that has not spoken yet wish to speak? Okay, anyone that has spoken prior can speak.
Use the microphone. Don't go that fast. Sylvia's
Stand.
When I was elected to the chair of the school committee, I knew it was my responsibility to be accountable to the people who elected me. That meant I needed to be with the taxpayers and the students and do the best for all of them. I didn't represent the company who built the new chair of the world, Mr. Williams Academy. I had to represent the school committee's responsibility in town of Hopkinton. When we selected a food service company for the students, I did not represent food service. I represented the students and the citizens of Charo. I feel the town council members were voted to the town council to represent the people of Hopkinton, not people who arrive in town and want to destroy our country property and walk off with a lot of money. A company whose purpose is to make money
give Hopkinton a little bit and leave us with a solar junkyard after a few years and not guarantee they will remove the junkyard when it ruins our aquifer, causes water runoff that will cause the Old Depot Road citizens to have damage to their homes when it happens. As you know, I hope the water runs downhill and the Home Depot Road, all the homes are built down from where those little panels can be. My thought is that the town council members voted to office to represent the Hopkinton citizens who elected them, not outside companies with unknown character, unknown ability to maintain its own junkyard, unknown guarantee to restore the property to the valuable condition it's in, and unknown intention to make whole the homeowners who have to pay the cost of fixing damage to their homes as a result of runoff from the junkyard or pollution of the aquifer that supplies clear and clean water. My question to the town council is, who do you represent?
John.
Hi, how are you? John,
John Pennypacker.
Pennypacker, D-E-N-Y, yes. I guess I'll start with a story. It's about me when I was young. It's a story about when I was younger, formative years. So when I was a boy, I don't know, about 6 years old. My grandmother took me to a 7-Eleven. And like probably most boys, I became Hey Grandma, can I have this candy bar? And she said no. And I asked for a small piece of candy, and she said no. I asked her for a piece of penny cake, bazooka, bubble, and she said no. So I stole it. I was a 6-year-old boy, and I stole a piece of 1 cent penny. And I put it in my pocket. And on the car ride home, I opened it up. And my grandmother said, John, where did you get that bazooka gum? I said, I bought it. Well, when did you buy it? At the store. Well, when did you pay for it? How did you pay for it? I said, well, I found a penny that was that. Later that day, my father came to pick me up and talked to my grandmother. He pulled me aside later on and he asked me, so I understand I said, I was a store and I know the store. And I was stricken, given, embarrassment. Fear. But my dad's smart, he's patient, and he asked me, John, how do you want to be known? Do you want to be known as John the thief? Do you want to be known as John the liar? Or do you want to be known as John the honorable? And I chose honorable. And that was that. So, flash forward to about 3 years ago, I looked for an opportunity to volunteer and I came to the Police Council. You recommended that I join the Conservation Commission. I did. I've been volunteering just to give back, to do what is right, to do what is honorable. And so, through the Conservation Commission, through my time with that and sitting ex officio on the planning board, I helped draft a comprehensive plan. It's a long process. The update took more than a year. I think it was almost a year between the time that the planning board ratified it and the council adopted it. A lot of work went into this. The members of the planning board, members of the conservation commission, staff in the town, and we hired a consultant. When I return this document, and I look at even the table of contents, I see recreation, conservation, open space, natural and cultural resources. And while we do have a section on economic development, it stops well short of anything that we've proposed so far. It talks about improving tax base, bringing jobs to the Hopkinton, and it doesn't talk about creating a manufacturing facility that's completely automated. And it's a little bit alarming.
So that's part of it, and I guess one of the first questions I have is, where's the conversation about compatibility? I've heard a lot about what this solar manufacturing facility is going to look like. I know about the trees, I know about the fence, but no one has really said what are the goals and the comprehensive plan that supports. No one's told really how it benefits the town. And I think that's the important conversation that we're missing. I mean, it's one thing to know about the project that's going in, but I think the first step is, why are we changing this plan? It took years to make it. And that's been changed 3 times since it's been passed. It's 2, 3, I don't know exactly. So that's, and then I wonder if we're left to sort of think about it. And so it brings me to sort of one of the old axioms that you'll hear is family plans, planning to fail. And so I can't understand why we would not hold the tenants put forward for this comprehensive plan. And I guess as I think this out, I'm more than just a resident of Hopkinton, I'm an investor. I think the largest, most expensive thing I've ever bought is my property in Hopkinton, and I certainly want to see its value preserved. I live in a residential neighborhood, I'd like to stay living in a residential neighborhood, and I'm nervous that my next door neighbor will rezone. I wouldn't like that to happen. I feel lucky that a bit of property near my house was given me open space, but that's not a story for everyone. And I'd like everyone to have the same opportunity. So I'd like the council to defend the comprehensive plan. I'd like you to think about it and cite it when you make a decision. Cite about why you're doing it and how it's supposed to be. I won't ask for a moratorium, but I know that's out there. And so as you deliberate whether or not you want to change the plan, I want you to think about, how do you want to be known? Do you want to be known as the town council to help developers replace all of our trees and solar panels? Or do you want to be known as the town council to listen to the public? Took the feedback from the comprehensive plan and defend its constituents.
Thanks, Jerry. Please, Steve. Good.
You guys all hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to start off just by letting you guys know, I appreciate the fact that you guys are thinking out of the box. I laud the council for looking into solar energy. I think that's renewable energy is the way to go, for sure. And you guys are on the cusp of it. I just want to let you know how important it is for the residents that you do this in a manner that's safe and well thought out. And I really just ask you to look inside yourself and say, hey, listen, when I want to have my home, my children next to a major solar array, when I want somebody to come in and take my beautiful backyard and turn it into a bunch of mirrors, there's just so many things that I wish you guys would look at that were brought up by the people that come to ask you, that approach you and ask you, please look at this through our eyes, since you do represent us. And I just wanted to bring up this platform, and I'll be really quick, okay?
Take your time.
This was a platform put out by the Democratic Town Committee for last election, and it was specifically for Tom Robb, Jerry Davis, who's not on the board now, no Russian, and Sylvia Thompson. This is the platform, which is basically your promise to constituents who come down and vote you, put you in the chair. And what it says is we will adhere to our oath of office, town charter, the comprehensive plan, zoning, and other initiatives that protect property rights for residents, farms, and businesses. We know town government can keep Hopkinton country and at the same time encourage clean industry. I think you can do that. You can fulfill and actually come through with the promise that you made us to get into office. And look at responsible development. Right now, you guys are full board into just rezoning And there's a lot of people here that couldn't make it. I mean, we had a petition signed by 280 residents showing negativity of what you guys are doing or debating it. You haven't done it yet, okay? I hope you've done, especially now where we live. And there were 80 people that showed up for the first meeting, over 180 for the last meeting. There's some people out there who really are concerned, and I just ask you guys, please be cognizant of what your constituents are asking, okay? And I appreciate you listening.
Thanks, Steve.
Good evening, can you hear me? My name is Tammy King Walsh. I live on Woodville Road in Hopkinton, and I spoke at the July 16th meeting. I was on the last one. And at that meeting, I voiced my opposition to this project. I continue to be opposed to the rezoning of residential property to commercial to accommodate large-scale solar arrays, particularly when the zone change is at the request of the developer. In my opinion, what we are considering constitutes spot zoning, which is contrary to our comprehensive plan. And I would just ask that you think very long and hard and keep in mind what our comprehensive plan stands for and adhere to.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Anyone else from the public?
Hi, I'm Lisa Hopkinton, and while I don't live right now where there are big arrays going up, I moved to Hope Valley 29 years ago because I loved the rural character of this place. And, you know, I've seen certain things happen that, you know, are a little upsetting to me, but it's not that bad. I love the birds. We live on the Wood River. I've seen eagles return. I've seen osprey in my backyard. And when I hear clear cutting forests, I think of the Atlantic flyway. I think of, you know, the animals that make our lives so much better here. And I just don't want to see, you know, what brought us to this place to begin with change. And that was all I had to say. Keep it beautiful. You know, one other thing, I've seen development come to other areas because it was, you know, it brought more money in. But in the long run, a lot of the towns that kept the rural character brought in a little bit of tourism. You know, it became a last green place to enjoy. So just keep it nice.
Thank you.
My name is Alexander Lucas.
Hello.
And I want to look at this from a different angle. To me, this is an unjust act to change my zone.
We didn't catch that.
It's an unjust act of changing my zone. Morally, it's unjust. And can you explain to me how this would be a just act to change the zoning of the people? I don't understand how it is. We made there's a contract here, and basically that we came in here was, and we bought our property, and now all of a sudden you're changing the rules on us halfway through it. Halfway through my investment, so can you explain to me how this is just? Can anyone? If it's not, you all took a pledge to one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. We all took that pledge. We have to defend freedom here. We have to defend this. And we take a pledge to each other not to be unjust. That's oppression. And oppression is illegal in this country because people have fought and gave their lives to keep our And when government just starts changing this stuff for money, for seeking profit, then it's unjust.
Okay, thank you. Speaking in the microphone, Father's Bishop.
Here I am, once again, standing before you, the town council, and those who are listening. I am passionate, and I am not considered to be one of the lucky ones who lives at the end of Old Depot Road. I'm the one who travels to the end of the road. I'm the one who gets to hear the keepers of the people in the vernal pools. I'm the one who gets to see the foliage on the road turn a beautiful yellow in the fall. I'm the one who hears the owls in the woods around me, and the one who gets to see the deer eat the apples off my tree. I don't care what the engineers are telling me that the forest is an unhealthy one, because that is not what I see. I am the lucky one. I'm asking now the residents of Old Depot Road if you could just please stand up for me. I urge you, Franklin Dolphy, David Husband, Barbara Coelho, Sylvia Thompson, and Thomas Buck, on the Hopkinton Town Council, to vote this project down. We have all done our research, we have handed you the facts, and we are all fighting very hard to keep our street the way it should be, residential. Clear-cutting forests and changing zones in residential areas is not the answer. Some of you might be fed up with us with the constant emails, phone calls, and visits to town hall, but we all fighting for something that we really believe in. I urge you to take one more long and hard look at our faces. Please consider what you will be doing to our families, our property values, our Oxford, our forests, and the beauty of our town. If you cannot do it for the residents of Old Depot Road, please, I urge you to vote no and do it for the beautiful historical town that we live in.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, anyone else?
Hi, my name is Eric Fiddler, and Joe and I agreed we weren't going to speak tonight because you've already heard a lot from us. But I wanted to say a couple of positive things. I really just wanted to pass along a positive comment that our discussion tonight had. Before saying that, I want to reiterate something that I said when I spoke in July at this hearing. I think the first thing I said to you was it's a tough job being council member. Take a lot of fire. I think we do realize that. And just want to reiterate that. But what I want to pass on to you was one of the residents on Old Depot Road, in the middle of all this incredible stress, worrying about her home, she's lived for 3 or 4 decades, turned to me, I'm not as blue, and said, you know, I think this is going to turn into a good thing. It's a good thing that we're having this discussion because planning board has meetings and all sorts of town business gets done and people don't pay attention. And now we're filling auditoriums with people who are debating what type of community they want to live in, what they want that community to look like, what they want the rules to be, what they think is fair and unfair, and how much development is the right development, and how much
Thanks, Eric.
Lawrence Stanley, 38 Depot Road. I mentioned before that as a Stanley, we've been in this town for 5 generations, over 100 years. And I don't think anyone's given more to the town than the Stanleys. My great-grandfather founded the Hope Valley Fire Association. He was the very first chief, volunteer. My father was a volunteer, my grandfather was a volunteer, I was a volunteer. My father committed 52 years of his life to this town. We've been there a long time, and everybody complains about taxes. We all like to have more money, but how far are we all willing to go for that money? None of us moved out because the taxes were too damn high. We all stayed because we loved the town. I fought my way back because I love the town. This is where I'm from, these are my roots. But when we bought that place over on Depot, the first thing my son did was have a couple of friends over. Forgive my voice, I'm strokes, I'm sorry. Had a couple of buds over, and they were trekking out through the woods, all the way from our house, checking out everything they could. All around, we were with those solar panels. They went all the way to 95, and all the way back again, and just had the best damn time. And they thanked me for bringing them here. And I told them I would always be there. Because this is Hope Valley, this is God's country. And this is what it's like down here in Hope Valley. And now, I feel like we've been backed up against the wall since we got into these meetings. Because I know there's a few people that like to quote dollar figures. Mr. Lindelfi, I know you said right there and said it is all about money to you on that. Well, to the people that live here, it's not all about money. It's about where we live. And to me, it's about where I'm from. Where my father will be buried, my grandfather is, my great-grandfather is, and my great-great-grandparents are. This is God's country. They want to turn it into a slot machine. And I'm hoping you people have enough conscience and enough of Hopkinton in you to not do the same. This is our time. And we're here because of love, not because we're all rich and here to continue sound. We're here because we love living in the country. And if taxes go up, we just pay it. We do what we gotta do. There's a price that's gotta be paid. But tearing the town apart, cutting down all the trees and running out the wildlife, that's not the price we want to pay. I don't think
also just don't quite know the answer. Does the council have reasonable authority to just say no to a project like this, or is there something about precedence or anything that makes it a little dicey? These are the questions. I'd like this time to see answer in the process. You can answer them now, or
As far as I know, Harvey, each application is taken separately and apart from the prior one, so we can say no or yes to anyone that comes before us. Okay. And I also, just so you know, I did get an answer on your district use table question. I reached out to the planner, and if the zone is changed from RFR 80 to commercial special and it automatically reverts back to RFR 80, there is no district use table needed. So Jim had answered that question. I think that was one of the questions you had at the last meeting. So
small town, quite a bunch of budgets, and sometimes our paperwork isn't quite organized the way we might wish it to. So when solar was added to the district use table, when you go on the town website, you can find it.
yeah, thanks, Harvey. Okay, anyone else? Yes, sir.
I don't even say turn up, but I just wanted to, as my name's Jim Donnelly.
Yeah, just come to
My name's Jim Donnelly, I'm an attorney. We feel I spoke last time I presented those documents to look at. And I had indicated that I represent quite a number of people, and I just wanted to give, for the record, a copy of my entry of appearance on behalf of people, just identifying 30 people who are residents and property owners who continue.
Sure. Yeah, give that to the clerk, Mr. Donnelly.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Amanda, I haven't seen you in a while.
That's right, right. Been away at school. Amanda Blau, BLAU, Hopkinton. As you all know, I moved to Hopkinton 13 years ago from suburban New York City. I spent 4 years as the Hopkinton representative on the school committee. I have been able to go work in DC, come back home, go to law school in Michigan, come back home, and Hopkinton has remained unchanged. We served, most of you were on this committee while I was on the school board. We had disagreements, sometimes we agreed, but the one thing I can say about this group is that you've always remained consistent in your positions, in your process, in your diligence. You dig. No one is more diligent than you are about line item by line item of the school budget. And as the town council, in that role, you come to the school committee and you push back on us. And you say, cut the budget, cut the budget, cut the budget. Look for waste, look for surplus, look for excess spending. And I think as a school committee member, I did what I could to be responsive to your concerns and citizens' concerns. This process and my kind of watching from the sidelines of what's been going on the last couple months seems out of character. It seems inconsistent with the way I know each and every one of you to have operated. It seems somewhat rushed. It seems less detail-oriented. It doesn't seem like the type of oversight that I have been able to count on this committee to have in my 14 years in Hopkinton. We would vote on a Xerox paper vendor or a light bulb vendor or a new water tank or new heating equipment at the school,
Raise the mic, Mr. DeGiorgio.
Sorry about that. Was that better? Usually I don't need one. As I listened to everybody speak, and I came in a little late, I apologize. I've been listening to everybody speak for so much, and it's always the same theme. It's about the zoning being wrong, it's about this being wrong, it's about solar energy not being part of Hopkinton. Yet, when I look around Hopkinton, I already see other solar energy areas, areas of solar energy. It doesn't seem to bother or impact the environment. As a matter of fact, it seems to help us. I've done a lot of research since the last time we met, I'm sure you have also. Solar energy is not what it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even 2 years ago. There's been so many advances in the batteries and the panels themselves. They're so much more eco-friendly in terms of the environment than they were just a couple of years ago. And it's amazing to try and come here and to try and argue against experts that have come here and talk to you. It seems to be a little bit, I don't know, a little bit disingenuous. And I don't mean to insult anybody, but it's just using old data, this is not something right. But more important than that, I too used to go away from home. I used to love coming back to Rhode Island. I went to Rhode Island for about 8 years. I was from Connecticut before that. I went to the military and I'm all over the place. But I know when I come back, but we would vacation in Rhode Island. We've owned the place in Hopkinton since 1971. My family. I loved it so much that we moved here and decided to make Rhode Island our home. One of the things I enjoyed about it was the freedom of Rhode Island. Rhode Island's one of those bastions left where you mind your own business, nobody's going to bother, within the construct of the law. I came here 3 years in 2015 moved to Hopkinton. I had no intention of selling any part of my land or giving any part of my land away. And when somebody approached about solar energy, I thought, you know what, it's a small part of my land, not a big part. It just seemed like the right thing to do when you look at the fact that we need renewable energy in this country. Not just this town, but this country. And a larger issue is the entitlement to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what we're all entitled to. These people are entitled to their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So long as they don't trample on mine, I'm entitled to mine so long as I don't trample on theirs. I dare say that if I would tell somebody that I'm an environmentalist and letting everything go back naturally, stop putting it on, let things grow out, let things go back to the way things were 100 years ago. Stop mowing your lawn, stop editing it, stop cutting it, stop doing anything with your trees, trim your bushes, don't plant anything else, just let everything that's here naturally grow. And people would probably be pretty upset telling me I'm going to mow my lawn whenever I want. What the hell are you telling me what to do? Same with my phone, to stop cutting down trees, to stop wanting to get firewood. We stop cutting down trees altogether. If everybody gets their way and says, I don't want those trees cut down, who's going to get the firewood for the winter and so where's that going to come from? Where do I stand with my hope as an American to my right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, to my ability to enjoy and do whatever I want with my home? If I want to put solar panels up, I can do that without having somebody else, a contractor, come in and do it. So what's the difference if a contractor comes in and does it? Is it really that much of a difference? Do I understand that I can put all the solar panels up I want? Rhode Island is actually one of the few states that's very solar friendly and would actually encourage us to put these up unless I misread the laws. So I guess what I'm asking you to consider is not only the environment, not only the impact of solar, but more importantly, this really is a constitutional issue more than anything. And this is a precedent that you guys are going to set that's going to reverberate around the world. If you're going to be able to sit and say, you know what, we're not going to rezone, we're not going to honor this, we're going to tell everybody that no, other people have the right to tell you what you can do with your property. We're going to listen to your neighbors, and we're going to handcuff you and tell you you can't do something with the property that you bought because your neighbors don't like it. And if that's what we're going to, then I don't know what I spent the last 25 years in my life. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to come over.
Thanks, Mr. DeGiorgio. Hold on a second, Margaret.
Hi there, I'm Marty.
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 talk into the mic.
Anyway,
Marnie,
it's okay.
Bill, you did.
I'm not in that one. You know, talking about freedom. When you go and poison our aquifer and destroy the chemistry of the air by just taking hundreds and thousands of trees down in 1 or 2 years and displacing all these creatures. Okay, you look at it, okay, but it's going to affect everyone, not just the little creatures and not just the water. You're not going to be able to drink your water anymore. Okay, this is about our lives here, about our health. Okay, as a community, as our children live here, these people aren't going to be here. I don't even know if you people want to stay here after all this is going to go through, but I'm telling you, like, what they wanted to do at Exit 1 and put the trucks out there, we fought that because of our aquifer, because of the water that we all drink and depend on, and this is absolutely going to destroy it. You keep putting them in these sensitive places that's going to run off the storms. You don't believe you're just going to be heavy storms coming? Okay, I just think of 2010 because it's going to happen again and again. And there's just no absolute reason that I can't believe that you want to just annihilate all these our freedoms of having good water.
Okay, thanks, Marnie.
Just wanted to add, after the last gentleman spoke, that Lisa Hopkinton, I totally believe in freedom, but freedom meets up with the rights of neighbors and others. I live on the Wood River, and because I do, there are laws as to whether I can cut down trees. I can't within a certain area of the river to keep it natural, to keep it beautiful, so that the entire community can enjoy it. I'm not allowed to do anything down on the water's edge with trees. So consequently, you know, some of my rights go to everybody else so that the community is a better place to live in. And that's what I like to say.
Joe Monroe, unfortunately, I'm breaking my promise. I'm breaking my promise. My original plans were changed by a member of the town council. I don't know why, but I will find out the answer. Last meeting, there were 190 people, 85 people the prior meeting. There was one gentleman that stood up in favor of this project. It's the gentleman that just stood up and spoke. That gentleman is also exactly what spot zoning is all about. Spot zoning is a financial gain for an individual at the detriment to others. That gentleman has a financial gain. It's zoned residential. It's changed, tempted for his financial gain. It's not in the best interest of Hopkinton. We are the residents of Hopkinton. It's our home, and we want to maintain the rural character. And he is incorrect. He cannot put up solar panels all over his property. Again, think about it. He's the only person that stood up in favor of this whole project for a financial gain. I'd like to ask him a question. How much money are you going to make? To Lauren's point, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It's unbelievable how much these developers would make. I was told it could be up to $200,000 depending on the wattage and what the price is sold per month. It's about the money. It's not about the rural character of a town. And I apologize to the people that I said I would not speak
Okay, anyone else out there? Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, we're not going to go back and forth, Mr. Julie. You've spoken, they've spoken, points are well taken, thank you.
Honestly, I would give up my share. I mean, I'm not making much money. I'll give it all up so that the other people can deal with it.
Please, no personal attacks. It's unnecessary. Please, no personal attacks.
So anyway, anyone else wishing to be heard on this matter? Okay. Having heard none, I guess we can probably make a decision. Well, actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Nacarado, you had some closing comments? No, he's all set. He's good. Kevin, go ahead. We had some statements. As promised, Kevin had prepared some statements regarding some procedural questions some of the folks had out in the audience. And Kevin can explain, I guess, some of those as to what his findings are. It's our solicitor, Kevin McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Kevin McAllister. I'm the town solicitor, and I represent the town in a number of capacities. I'm a legal advisor to the town council. I'm a legal advisor to the planning board. I work with the administration. I handle any lawsuits that are brought against the town. So I do a lot of things for the town, and I'm happy tonight to share a few legal opinions that have been requested, some from the public, some from members of the council. I'm going to briefly summarize 4 of these opinions that have come up, these topics have come up. Not my opinions haven't come up, but these topics have come up. And I put them out there. Council President Lindell, who asked me to present these opinions tonight, so I'm happy to do so. The first opinion I'd like to talk about is the question came up a couple of meetings ago about an ordinance that can be interpreted to require more than a majority vote to approve a zoning ordinance in a zoning ordinance change in a situation where the planning board has recommended to the council to not approve those. It's kind of a long, complicated process. I'll spare you the explanation other than to say whenever a zone change amendment is applied for, as was the case here, before the council can vote on it, it's a matter of state law that the planning board has to have its own hearing on the issue and then present what's called an advisory opinion to the council, recommending whether or not the planning board thinks the council should approve it. So it's an advisory opinion, it's a recommendation. That process was followed here as it always is. So the question is, there is an ordinance that's 35 years old that was brought up by Mr. Donnelly a couple of meetings ago, specifically Chapter 2, Article 2, Division 5, Section 2-116, subsection A. And it refers to situations where the ordinance seems to require more than a majority vote when the planning board has rendered a decision. That's the word in the ordinance. Ordinance is decision. So that's the point that was raised, so I'm going to address that. In summary, it's my considered opinion that that ordinance does not apply to this situation. There's a hierarchy in the law. A constitution trumps a statute trumps a regulation, a state law trumps a town law. Within the town government, the hierarchy is the town charter governs any ordinances. So the ordinances are subject to whatever the town charter says. So the town charter is really the constitution of the town of Hopkinton, and it has greater force than any ordinance that may be passed at any time. So I want to start out with state law. Rhode Island General Laws 45-5-3 says, it's very simple, it's a two-line statute. It says, a majority of the persons elected as members of any town council shall be a quorum, and a majority of the members present at any legal meeting may determine any matter legally before them. So this statute specifically says that a majority of a council makes its decisions. When council is considering an ordinance or amending an ordinance, that's a legislative function. That's what this is talking about. So state law, to the extent it conflicts with the ordinance I mentioned earlier that was brought up by Mr. Donnelly, it overrules it. Because it says majority rule applies. Similarly, Hopkinton's charter, the town charter, and specifically section 3141, says the following, verbatim. A town council quorum shall be a majority of its members. A majority of the members present at any legal meeting may determine any matter legally before the town council, provided that final passage of ordinances or amendments to ordinances shall require the affirmative vote of the majority of its members. So, as I mentioned a minute ago, and I don't think anyone would dispute this, a town charter has greater legal force and effect than any ordinance. So, for those reasons and other reasons, which I don't need to go into, it's my opinion that for any zoning ordinance that comes before the council, any that's come before it in the past, any that's pending for it now, any that comes up in the future, a majority vote of 5, majority vote of 3 or more members is required to enact that ordinance. So that's the first topic. The second topic that came up, I think Harvey reiterated again tonight, and again the council promised that we'd address that before we close the hearing. The question is whether or not more than 4 amendments to a comprehensive plan can be made in 1 year. So again, I look to the statute, Rhode Island General Laws 45-22.2-8B as in boy 3 specifically says that indeed it's limited to 4 times a year. Let me just get the exact quote. That section of the statute says, a municipality may not amend its comprehensive plan more than 4 times in any 1 calendar year. So clearly the answer is, it may not. But the sub-question has come up is whether or not a change to the future land use map constitutes an amendment to the comprehensive plan. And it's my opinion that those are 2 different things. That the statute does not address amendments to future land use maps. Rather, it refers to changes to the comprehensive plan. And specifically, it's my opinion that in terms of counting those, and remember, as we sit here tonight, we're under 4 anyway. So this is more of a hypothetical discussion because it really doesn't apply yet to this particular project, one way or another. But it's my opinion that changes to the future land use map are not governed by that prohibition. Because I think that's a different topic than changes to the comprehensive plan. Now I know a member of the state planning office has expressed a different opinion, which is fine. We all have our own opinions. My opinion is that of a lawyer. And I'm happy to share that tonight. Another question that has come up, I answered it a little bit several meetings ago when it came up from a question in the audience, but I want to be a little more elaborate about my answer, a little more detailed in my answer. And that question was, can a change in the zoning ordinance be retroactively applied to an application for some form of zoning relief that's already substantially filed with the town, substantially completed and on file with the town? And the answer to that one is clearly no. And again, I'll go to the statutes which govern our law, zoning laws in this state. And I'm going to read again from Rhode Island General Laws 45-24-44, subsection C. It says as follows: any application considered by a city or town under the protections of this section shall be reviewed according to the regulations applicable in the zoning ordinance in force at the time the application was submitted. So that's about as clear and unambiguous as it can be, in my opinion. So to sort of flesh that out, and I'm going to talk about a moratorium in a minute, but to flesh that out, that once a substantially completed application has been filed for the town, any changes to the zoning ordinance that happen after that will not apply to that pending application. So I think it would be very hard to find lawyers in this area that would disagree with that. You may have heard in the course of your educations a general prohibition against ex post facto laws. Those are after the fact laws. That's nothing more than a reflection of that principle in the law, which is an ancient principle really in our law. But the statute again is 45-24-44 subsection C. The last topic I was asked to address tonight was to talk a little bit about moratoriums. So let me give you a simple answer to a simple question. Could the council enact a moratorium if it wanted to? And the answer is yes. So I want to put that out there first and foremost. But again, as in these other things I've been talking about, there happens to be a state statute that's very specific about what a town needs to do in order to enact a valid, legally appropriate moratorium. And that can be found, and again, if people are taking notes, I certainly invite them to look this up. It's Rhode Island General Law 45-22.2-13, subsection E. It's a rather lengthy section, but basically the first paragraph says a one-time moratorium for the purpose of providing interim protection for a planned future land use or uses may be imposed during the first 12 months subsequent to the adoption of the local comprehensive plan, provided that a change to the zoning ordinance and map has been identified and scheduled for implementation within 12 months of plan adoption. The moratorium shall be enacted as an ordinance and may regulate, restrict, prohibit any use, development, or subdivisions under the following provisions. I'm going to get to those following provisions in a minute. But conceptually, this council amended and reenacted the comprehensive plan as required by state law back in January or February of this year. So we certainly are within that first 12-month period. That's the first prerequisite of doing a moratorium. And the second part I read, it says that the moratorium has to identify what the changes are going to be within 12 months of that. So we're still in that window. And I point out as an aside that earlier in tonight's meeting, when we were doing the business part, you may remember that the council voted to schedule a date for a hearing. I think the date was October 15th to discuss an ordinance amending our solar ordinances. That has to be done by ordinance, but that type of activity, that type of ordinance, I think, again, is what this moratorium preconditions refers to. If that's the council's intention, or turns out to be the council's intention, then that would be compliant too, because again, we're within that 12-month window. But here's what I want to explain this to you. The rest of this statute, the following provisions also must be complied with before a valid enforceable moratorium can be entered. First restriction is the moratorium is restricted to those areas identified on a map or maps as required in another part of the statute. In other words, if a change is going to affect, say, only the Ashway part of town, then all those properties owners would have to get individual notice. And I'm going to get to the notice in a minute, but you have to identify where that change would apply. Now, in this case, the ordinance that's going to start this ordinance process, beginning with the hearing in October, that would be a town-wide change, because it would apply, in theory at least, to any solar project in any part of town, and set forth restrictions and regulations. So that would involve a notice to be provided by first-class mail to any property owners affected by the moratorium at least 14 days in advance of the public hearing. That would require to enact an ordinance creating a moratorium. It would require first-class notice to every property owner in the town, which would be a substantial expense and a substantial administrative task for the town to accomplish. I'm not saying they couldn't do it, but it's a lot of work and there's a lot of cost to it. The ordinance, the ordinance that the moratorium would be sort of working with, or in conjunction with, I guess is the better way. And the ordinance enacting a moratorium would have to specify the purpose of the moratorium, the date it shall take effect, and the date it shall end, the area covered by the moratorium, and it would also specify the regulations, restrictions, or prohibitions to be established by the moratorium, which again is a reference to that statute, that ordinance, type of ordinance that's being proposed for hearing on October 15th. So, in order to have a valid moratorium, all those hoops have to be jumped through, all those hurdles have to be gone through. And I would venture to say that, as a practical matter, the ordinance that's coming up for hearing on October 15th is way ahead procedurally from where a moratorium ordinance would be. So, you tie all of that with the fact that putting a moratorium on solar development in town would not affect any pending applications anyway. The question really is, the only purpose you'd have a moratorium is to fix the solar ordinance, and the town's already well along the road to fixing the solar ordinance. So it kind of doesn't serve a purpose as a practical matter. That's not my legal opinion. I'm just putting it out there why this is relevant and why it ties in with the other one. So if you consider them both horses in a race, the horse that's scheduled for hearing on October 15th is already way ahead of where a moratorium ordinance would be. It hasn't even been drafted or anything else at this point. You still have to go through that whole process of referral to the planning board. It's got to be advertised and all these other things I just talked about. So yeah, you can do a moratorium. There's no question about it. But you got to jump through all those hoops. And I'll mention this aside, probably as a typical Rhode Island anecdote. Someone mentioned at one of the hearings that Gloucester has recently done a moratorium. And that's actually true. I happen to know the solicitor in Gloucester, and I bumped into him at a seminar several weeks ago, before that came up here. And it was enacted, and it was also challenged in court. So the moratorium in Gloucester is already in Superior Court being challenged, litigated. I assume, I haven't seen it, but I assume there's probably an allegation that it doesn't comply with this kind of complicated moratorium statute I just bored you with. So that's what I wanted to share with you about the moratorium. I think those are the 4 things I was asked to address tonight. So I hope it is.
Thanks, Kevin, appreciate it. Mr. Nacarado, did you have any comments, I guess? Yeah, it's going to go on, I mean, back and forth. How many people have a quick question? No, I know. No, I know, Mr. Donovan.
Can the residents speak though before the attorney?
Well, yeah, but the residents have spoken, though, so I'm just trying to move things along. No, I know that, I know that. It was, all right, so Mr. Donnelly and Ms. Moreau. You got a couple minutes. Quick.
Paula Moreau, 32 Old Depot Road. In my previous work, I worked a lot with the Old Americans Act, and part of my responsibilities were to research legislation, anything that was being promulgated, statutes, federal and state. And as far as our office was concerned, and this was the Office of the Long-Term Care State of Hudson, I worked directly with her in her legislation that she would propose. We worked under the understanding that if federal law existed and it did not supersede, or as long as it was more stringent or severe than the state law, the federal did supersede the name. You had to abide by that. If a state statute existed and it was more stringent or more severe than the state, it then became law. This is my understanding.
Thanks, Ms. Moreau. Mr. Donnelly?
I just wanted to, Jim Donnelly, I just wanted to be clear. I never made any type of suggestion that whatsoever that a change to a zoning ordinance required more than a job. I never stated that. This is a particular, and it's a totally different statute, how you enact your comprehensive plan. And this is the section 2-16, etc. That is applicable only to the preparation by the planning board of a comprehensive plan amendment. That's what I was talking about. It's nothing to do with the zoning ordinance. You've been each time you've addressed it, you've said we're bringing we have 2 things. We have a comprehensive plan, and it's pursuant to that statute, and then we have a zoning ordinance. So I'm not saying absolutely zoning ordinance is my own job, but this is a particular thing that says when you're talking about a comprehensive plan, that's not overruled by state law. And the specific, as we learn in law, always rules over the general. So this is how we do it, only in the case of making a comprehensive plan. And that's why I was saying that the last one was done. It says that you've got to have 2/3, so it wasn't valid. So it's nothing to do with the zoning ordinance. It's like you just have a job. Secondly, you know I would make it different, but I did provide you with the actual statute. It was tell what are the required components of the comprehensive plan, as RIGL 4522.2-6, and it lists all of the components of it, among which are the maps which depict all of the goals, et cetera, et cetera. And as my brother, first I'm going to say, alluded to, the state plan said, of course, it's a change. And according to the law, it's a change. I mean, we can all have our opinions, but you guys can bring it in and order provided that to you. And one other question that did come up, though, when one of the residents did ask a question, it said about the automatic changing that, etc. If the use was discontinued, that's I don't have. I just heard it for the first time here, but this Rhode Island Supreme Court case law on that says it's not permitted. Can't do that because it would be in violation. When you're saying, well, if you don't use it now, we'll go back to the original. Can't do that. That's a zoning change, and the zoning change has to be done according to the procedures outlined in the statute, which provide for notice, provide for hearing, et cetera, et cetera. So that is not a possible thing to do.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks, Mr. Donovan. Okay. Then, Mr. Nacarado?
Evening. There's not a lot of attorney perhaps, just by the way of someone. And I'm not here to argue with anybody. People have their own opinions. I think that's absolutely fine. I agree with Mr. Peoples and the fact that this is a process. We got a right to be heard. We got a right to be heard. We got a right to apply for a zone change. Mr. Wheels got a right to apply for a zone change. Looking at this application, this is an application involving 100 acres of land, 60 of which are not being touched. They are partial wetlands, and by agreement with the developer, we are leaving 6 or 7, I guess it's 8 acres of land untouched at 700 feet from Old Depot. When first of all, before I I'd like to make Mr. Mancini's memo, a 5-page memo dated August 28th, part of the record, and as part of the record, when we look at this application, when one of the things that's being clearly is the purchase of the development rights to the garden property. You know, you can laugh and you can make fun of it, but that's nothing that is required to be done by the applicant. That is a piece of property that was negotiated with the land trust. They did not have enough money to purchase the property. This developer is stepping in and replacement of the acreage that he's using, he is proposing to purchase the development rights. There is an agreement to do this with Mrs. Darby and to donate the development rights to the town, either to the land trust or to the town itself. But keep in mind that this is a donation, no money transfer between, no money will transfer between the town and Mrs. Gardner or Mr. Delacari. And the Gardner parcel, as testified to, is a superior parcel to development, and it's being taken out of development and will be restricted without conservation. No topsoil or fill is being removed from the site by agreement. No chemicals are used, no herbicides are used. The weed whacking is the only method of controlling vegetative growth. The town of Mount is being processed and monitored. And again, no cost to the town will not be involved. And as testified to, it's our belief that the town does have responsibility, having used that parcel of land for the town land. And although the town has not been notified of DEM at this point, it is our belief that the town does have some responsibility in closing that land. And as estimated by our experts, that could cost the town anywhere between $800,000 and $1 million. We are doing it ourselves, we're paying the fine along with the present owner of the property, and that is at no cost to the town. In addition, the noise level emanating from the site will not increase the property line no more than 3 decibels. There is ambient noise level from Route 95 present now. Its increase will only be 3 decibels, which is not considered a nuisance. Nesting boxes will be placed around the site to allow small animal play licensed by others.
Ben, speak into the mic, please.
In addition, the town at developers' expense, construction will be monitored on a monthly basis and after construction on a yearly basis. Otherwise, we would pay the town to select an expert to monitor this while we're doing construction and after construction to see that all the aspects of approval of this plan would be strictly adhered to. In addition, the decommissioning of the site, which is the removal of racks and sites, that would be in the form of a cash escrow, not a bond, but cash actually deposited with the town. Whatever number the town is comfortable with, either set by the town council or set by the planning board. And in addition, a deforestation program has been submitted to the town by a state engineer. And again, you would fund that by a cash escrow in advance if approval is granted. And I believe that amounts in the form of $62,000 and change, which we are willing at the approval of this application. And let me just say, I appreciate people coming here and voicing their opinion. And it's very difficult to tell people, that's you're wrong. That gentleman's correct. Solar has come a long way. This is not a junkie. And people have nothing to fear on Old Depot Road by being 2 football, more than 2 football fields away from the first solar panel. You are not going to be affected value-wise as your home or in any way inconvenienced by panels that are more than 800 feet away. And other than saying we will do what we said we're going to do, we're going to purchase additional property, replacement of the property, using the solar, and the town is relieving itself of a tremendous burden of closing this land, which has been in effect for 30-some odd years, probably more. However, I have not heard anyone say anything about the townships. The real applicants here, they have suffered an enormous burden over the years. The town leased property from them to put in a landfill, and then, in effect, has walked away from this property. The property is now coming back to light, and we're going to deal with it best way you know about and not about and know it's the best. Other than that, I close there. Thank you for all your time.
Thanks, Mr. Notaro.
Frank, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yeah.
You mentioned it just now regarding the dump site. You said the town, you see, or somebody sees the town being responsible for that site. Where does that information come from? Is that something that you assume, or is this, can you name me the state office or the individual up in the state who says this?
I can't name the state
Well, it came from someplace.
The opponents here contacted the state, and the individual who was responsible for the fines and imposed upon Mrs. Townsend, and they gave them a half.
Is this in writing someplace?
This is in writing.
Because I like to see that. And also, then, where did the figure of 800,000?
That came from Mr.
So, maybe, I guess you can't answer this question, but I just have a general question. This is the logic. That site's been there for started 60 years ago. The town got out of it more than 50 years ago. The state hasn't done one thing in 50 years. Why would the state do something now 50 years later? 50 years later. It doesn't make any sense. It's logic, common logic.
There is no statute of limitations.
Of course not. But 50 years,
You know,
That's your question.
are you asking me?
yes, I'm asking you, why do you think?
I think because the state has never seen police. They have never seen police between Townsend and the town.
Never seen the link?
They've never seen a police.
Yeah.
There is an actual police. I mean, to assume that you're not responsible in some degree for looting that dump that's a quantum leap on your. You say the state has not done anything to enforce the lien because of the operation of this Lowry and coincidentally by their ownership of the towns. But all there are liens on that property is gone. They're in the vernacular. That property has its own. And nobody pays any attention to them. I mean, the assume you're just going to walk away from that without any responsibility. I think it's very foolish. When Mr. Hopkinton, who is experienced in dump closure, he says, you're responsible. You've got a degree of responsibility. It may not be 100%, but surely it's a portion. And the people that contacted the state gave that individual half information. Yeah. And it's not true. It's not true. The town has a responsibility.
So it has a portion, which could be 20%, not 100%, or 30%,
It's
10%.
It's not for me to determine how.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But it's a portion.
It's a portion.
And that could be a much smaller portion.
Mr. Bobby is dead with no assets. The Townsends have no assets.
Yeah, let's go. Excuse me, guys. We've had you folks speak. We're interacting with Mr. Nacarado. Let us finish, please, with no interruptions. I appreciate it. David, you all set?
I'm also thank you, Frank.
Barbara, did you have anything for Ben?
No, thank you. Tom.
Sylvia, do you have anything for Ben?
Yes. The project itself, the land you're going to use has changed. You decided that to get farther away from Old Depot Road, for instance, 700 feet. So the project itself has changed. And my question to you is, in the documents that you originally submitted, and it's around 97 acres, but I saw that 42 point something acres, 42.5 whatever it was, is the solar project itself. So I just want to get to the facts, and so in other words, we're not, if you move forward with this, it's not 97 acres that will be affected. However, the project will include, I think, that same section up there that went back 700 feet, and still includes that, right?
It does.
So you're probably around 97 acres still?
Yes.
What I want to know is that a good number? 42 acres out of that total are going to be used for solar, or has that decreased because that section came off?
That decrease with the reduction of the 7 acres. Total amount of 7 acres.
Does anybody know exactly how many acres? I don't know that section up there, how many acres that was, so.
Seven, I think it was 7 acres, I was in.
And I believe solar is being used on 41.5 acres.
Or less because of that section?
No,
No, it's 41 now?
Yes.
All right, thank you, that was my question.
I'm sorry, somebody else? Okay, Bobby, answer.
Yeah, I have one question. The solar panels are generating approximately how many megawatts? I believe it's 13.75 now.
I think the megawatts are 11.5.
I'll say that again.
11.5.
11.5
Yes.
is what it is now. I thought it went down to 13.
It has gone down.
It did go down, but I thought it went down to 13.75. It went down even lower to 11.5.
May I ask a question?
No. Joe, you've spoken, we have to talk to him, then we're going to talk about either closing the hearing or we're going to continue.
You are correct, I've spoken about it. I just would like to ask Ms.
We're not going back and forth, Joe. We've given you plenty of time to speak. I've been more than generous.
You talked about fines, the town was never fined.
No, I know, but that's up to us to decide.
The lake was fined $81,188.
Joe, please.
Townsend was fined
Joe,
$35,000.
Joe, you're getting out of hand, please. It's not you, please. I understand, thank you.
He doesn't understand.
As long as we do, we'll be fine. Just, anything else from Mr. Nakalani? Council, okay. So I need a motion to either close the hearing or... Oh, I'm sorry. So, I would be safe to, I guess, suspect we're pretty much done with the hearing. Just need a motion to close it, I would imagine.
I just have a quick question, right?
Yep.
To you guys. I couldn't hear, I couldn't hear part of the gentleman's earlier comments. Is his transcript published, like, publicly?
Yeah, she's taken that, yeah.
Right, so is the full transcript?
Yeah,
like,
it'll be
the minutes?
available.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I won't ask him to.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Right.
May I motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
It said it's date for decision. All right, let's see. Okay, motion made in second. Let me see what we got here. I wanted to actually make a separate meeting for this decision, other than a town council meeting. I think it would be appropriate. And it's going to be here, right? I guess my question would be to Kevin and Lisa. I think I asked Lisa earlier, but with all the transcripts that need to become available for us to review and whoever else may need to review, what is a realistic date for a decision? Date for a decision.
Your next regularly scheduled council meeting is the 17th. Then after that, you have a Monday, the 24th, that you could hear it or decide on it. Then you're going into the month of October.
Right, so does the 24th give everyone enough time to publish transcripts and be ready, I guess, with findings of fact? How many days?
That's cutting it close. Yeah, that's cutting it close. I'd like time to be able to review it reasonably.
All right, so if we creep into October,
You you've got Monday, October 1st. Then the following Monday is a holiday. Then it's October 15th, which is a regular town council meeting. Then you have October 22nd.
How about the day after a holiday, it's October 9th? How does that sound? Seem okay, guys?
Tuesday, October 9th?
Yeah. Give everybody enough time? Okay. So motion was made and seconded. Everybody's okay with that 10-9 date here? That's, probably let's do 6:30, not 7. Okay, 6:30, yes.
And will you be having that here or at the...
Yeah, I would imagine here.
We'll see what I can get if it's available.
Okay, all right. All right, so a motion made and seconded. No other comments from council? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you. And then I need a motion to return, I guess.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Could we just adjourn in memory of Senator John McCain? Thank you.
Okay, motion made and second?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.